Hello, beautiful alchemist. Welcome to Reiki Radio. I am your host, Yolanda, and we are here today with another fun conversation. I have to ask you, have you been having fun lately on Reiki Radio? I'm asking because I have. I feel like the recent interviews and conversations have been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed them. And I'm so thankful that we get to share in all of this wisdom as a community. So, today, we keep the party going. We are going to have a conversation with someone named Happy Ali, and he has authored a book called The Intuition Bible: How and Why to Tap into Your Inner Wisdom. Now, you all know I have been saying, at least for the past year, I just feel like it is such an important time for us to be in relationship with our intuition, to have more clarity, more guidance, more understanding, especially with all that's going on in the world. There's so much noise and confusion, and it can become overwhelming. But being in relationship to our intuition has more benefit than we can imagine. It's not just predictive. There are so many other reasons and ways that your intuition can support you. So you will learn even more about this through today's conversation with Happy. Now, Happy has written another book as well called The Charisma Within, but we focus mostly today on the Intuition Bible. So he is a prophetic dreamer, a certified master NLP practitioner, a certified master clinical hypnotherapist, and host of the Happy Insights podcast. Happy's spiritual journey began in 1995 when he dedicated his life to the exploration of metaphysical disciplines after his near death experience that inspired a dramatic awakening. And you will hear all about that. But now Happy teaches and shares the subconscious manifestation methodology that he created, and he shares this globally. He lives in Los Angeles, and you can find him online. His website is happyinsights.net. That's happyinsights.net. And you can listen to his podcast, Happy Insights Podcast, found everywhere where you can tune in to podcast. So, before we get into this incredible conversation, I just want to remind you again that the Reiki Raise Global Healing Summit is now available. You can purchase your early bird ticket for 70% off. So that makes it only $57 for the entire summit, which includes over 30 interviews with teachers and practitioners from around the world. You will learn tips for how to strengthen your own Reiki practice, how to support your Reiki business, how to get out there and volunteer. There's just so much content. It's incredible, and I'm sure you will love all of it. The link to get your early bird ticket is down in the show description. And then, of course, if you want to spend an entire year working with me and other alchemists, be sure to sign up for the Alchemy Circle. So, this is the program that I do every single year since 2020 when it began. And it is group mentoring. We meet together weekly throughout the year. You also, as a member, get access to all of the online classes that I am teaching next year. And you also get to join the weekly live events that we do. It's a way of fully committing to your practice and going deeper into your awakening and unlocking your own energetic alchemist. So it's so much fun. There's just so much, so much that you'll get access to. So just go to my website and read more about it and then sign up for the Alchemy Circle. I look forward to spending the year with you. That's it for now, my loves. I really want you to get to hear and meet and learn from Happy. Just as a reminder, again, you can follow Happy on Instagram at Happy Insights Official on Instagram. And you can also listen to the podcast on all podcast platforms. So let's get into this episode, and I will see you on the other side. Okay, everyone, we are here today with Happy Ali, the author of The Intuition Bible: How and Why to Tap into Your Inner Wisdom. I cannot wait for this conversation. Thank you for joining us today, Happy.
Thank you so much for having me here, Yolanda. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it really is, especially. So I kind of teased you beforehand to say I'm excited about this conversation because I always say, actually, this year a lot for some reason, I've been saying, I think it's really important for us to figure out how to be in relationship with our intuitive mind um, for so many reasons, right? So, with your book and what we're going to discuss, I think it's just going to support that. Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree with you
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So, one of the things I wanted to start with is just asking you that because you do have a lot of focus on the power of intuition and how that can be used to really support a more fulfilling life. And I think people think intuition is just like predictive type of thing. Can you talk about why this is such an important topic to you?
So, first of all, I think intuition is any information that comes outside of your logical mind. And it could be predictive, it could be your soul talking to you, you could be tapping into different dimensions and different frequencies, different beings. It doesn't even matter where it comes from. It just doesn't come from the usual channel that you're used to. And the good thing about tapping into your intuition is that the information that comes through you is tailored to you and your needs.
Mm,
That and it's important to know that because the information that comes from without the outside world is not really tailored for us at all. It's just basically, a salad of like information just being thrown at us.
right.
And we have to decipher what's right for us and what's wrong for us and what paths to take. And I think the more we encounter and enter a world of loaded information, the more we need to learn the inner voice and how to communicate with it. And that's why right now is extremely important because of social media, news, and everybody with their strong opinions, from your mother to, politicians and such. And they all want to tell you what's right and what to do. And the truth is, what's right for other people is not always right for us. It's seldom right for us.
Right.
So you need to develop that language and start learning to see how your intuitive mind, your inner world talks to you, and learn to quiet the mind long enough or learn the language of it so that you incorporate your inner world into the conversation.
Mm,
And it's not just outer noise. So
yeah.
that's kind of why I think it's extremely relevant right now at this time and becomes more relevant in the future. And also with the onslaught of AI, it's kind of cool because let me tell you something really interesting.
Yeah.
So, have you heard of the term as above, so below?
Yes.
It's a term that means whatever is on the physical world is happening also on the spiritual level. And right now, we have access to this supercomputer AI that is really quick to spew out information, calculating a lot of different data. So you just tap into it and say, hey, I just need to know about this. Tell me. And it will tell you. And because it's become more accessible, the above, so below example shows that right now we have access, new access, and easier access to the spiritual database that would be
Mm,
the spiritual AI. So, because the outer and inner world and the spiritual and the physical world always have to balance each other out, now, just the same way as we have access to new AI, we have access to our inner, um, not so artificial
right.
intelligence.
No, that makes all the sense in the world. I haven't heard anyone say that. I love that. So I do want to get into it with you about the different levels of mind or the different levels of consciousness as well, because I think that's an important part for our understanding. But before we do, I'm really curious of why and how this all opened up for you. So, how did you even get into this relationship with intuition yourself? And could you tell us what happened with your near death experience?
So, my family, from my mother's side, are prophetic dreamers. So we dream things in advance. We get to see a preview of life, especially with very dramatic events. Now, I've gotten much better at it with simple events
Hmm.
that are not so significant, but we've always seen it. So that was my introduction to there's an inner world that defies time and space.
Right.
And then this is so silly, but I wanted to tell you this. I was 15 at the time. I just gotten my learner's permit to be able to drive. And I was an obsessive Madonna fan in the, younger years of my life. And I wanted to go to her house so bad. And you couldn't just Google it or find her address. You still can't, but it's easier now. And I got in the car and just headed towards Hollywood Hills because I knew that's where she was. And Hollywood Hills in Los Angeles is a like a maze. It's not like a linear, it's not like straight lines, you go this way, that way. It's just
Right.
like all these dead ends and circles and things. So I would go to a stop sign and say right or left or forward. And whatever my gut would say, I would follow. Never made
Wow.
one U-turn. And I ended up in front of her house because I knew what it looked like because I'd seen a picture of it. And
Wow.
that was the beginning of me really knowing that there was an inner voice that was very aware of my desires and the location of my desires and how to get me there. And I just had to take a moment and trust because at that moment I had no other options.
Hmm.
So that was my only option. So that was my silly way of really learning about intuition. And then in 1995, I had a near death experience where it was a self induced near death experience. It's a nice way to put it. And I thought I was going to go to sleep and never wake up again. And things occurred, and I did wake up the next morning. But in the process, I tapped into something amazing because I let go of all the resistance, the worries, the concerns when I went to bed because I thought I'd never have to deal with any of that again.
Right.
And because I did that, I had an accidental enlightenment. And I went to sleep with a singular perspective on life, and I woke up with a multifaceted, multi perspective of reality. And I understood so much that I thought I had died and they had replaced my soul with someone really wise so they wouldn't waste a 17-year-old's body. That's how much I knew overnight.
Wow.
And that came from within. It didn't come from learning from books or anything. So that was another thing that really just that day changed my life. And I learned how to be happy. And because of that, eventually my name became Happy. So I've had this name for 29 years or so, 28 years. And it really, it's a legacy that my children are carrying on. And that was a game changer because something really cool happened that morning when I woke up. I was having precognition, which means I would see a door open, someone walk in, and then look, and the door would be closed. And then a few seconds later, the door would open and that person would walk in. So I
Wow.
learned about energy, how everything's energy first and then it's physical.
Right.
I learned about the fact that uh, there is, there's a reincarnation, there's no death, there is so much more. And that's kind of how I went on this path. And then later, I was not a verified intuitive or prophetic dreamer until I had my first child, and I dreamt him in a year and a half in advance. And as a gay guy, having a kid is not something that is easy
Right.
or something that just happens.
Yeah.
But I was shown that I was gonna have a son and who I was gonna have it with. And a year and a half later, I not only had him through a turkey baster method at home technique, like basically just luck.
Right.
And I also adopted his sister, which was my goddaughter. So I ended up with two kids. And I met him. I knew it was a boy, all of that in advance, a year and a half in advance. And 4.5 years later, I had a dream of the death of two people in my life. And it was my dad and and another one of my best friends, not the one that I had the kid with. And 2.5 months after that first dream, I had another dream of a car accident, and that day my son and my best friend died in a car crash.
Wow.
So it was very, um, it was interesting because I knew everything happens on an energetic level first. So
Hmm.
it calmed the nerves when it came to, or just, it just made me feel like things were meant to be, even though the death of a 4.5-year-old child or his mom, who was my best friend of 18 years, she was 40, just seems so out of whack.
Right.
But when you see it already in motion in advance, you know that there's nothing to stop that and things are as they are. And then he started visiting me my son and guiding me and answering my questions as to why he died. And she told me, my best friend, why she died. And then he started telling me I was going to have more kids and guided me to the children that I have now, which are 7.5-year-old twins. So I follow my intuition, I follow my inner guidance, and it leads me on my soul's path. So it makes sense why I would write this book because I really do believe that I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the inner messages and paying attention to them and following the
Right.
guide.
Wow. Okay. So I have a couple of questions for you from what you just shared, Happy. I mean, that's incredible. So one of the things that you said, especially with the Madonna reference, it's interesting how you said, you know, you got to one stop sign and then you would ask kind of sense which way, and then the next and the next. And it just gave this feel of one step at a time, right? Because I think a lot of times we try to over project rather than just like be in the moment of what is this step first. So I wanted to ask you, does that relate in any way to how intuition works for you, or is there any correlation there with that?
Sometimes you do get real-time information when you, because those are my favorite guidance types when
Hmm.
you're at a crossroads and you ask a question and it gives you guidance. So I think that's the real-time information, not really tapping into the future or the past, although you are always tapping into the future in some way
Right.
because it's guiding you towards something that it knows. But if you want to live the best life possible, you got to live in the now
Yeah.
and then trust that you'll know what to do. And that's really hard to do because as humans, we are over planners.
Hmm.
But anybody who's planned a lot of stuff knows that if you plan stuff, expect for half of it to fail, you know.
Right.
So it does. I think that's my favorite part of intuition, tapping into the inner knowing of now,
Right. Yeah.
knowing that I will have guidance at this moment. But sometimes, there's information that comes from within that is not about right now. It's about the
Yeah.
future. It preps you for the future and other things.
Well, I that's another thing with what you shared. I was wondering with having the visions that are of what's to come, does it help you to deal with and process things prior to it happening? So, kind of like, I think of sometimes when we are watching someone die, we're processing the grief through the process of watching. And then when it actually happens for a lot of people, then it's kind of this, thank goodness they're not suffering, versus where it's like an unexpected thing, then grief takes a whole different face. So, does that help with process?
I think it's a post-death process or post process because you don't really feel the feels until the event happens.
Okay.
But then you have the information that you got previously and it helps you process. It's almost like a tool that you have to process
Yeah.
because when someone is sick, it's easier to, you're watching them suffer, you're watching everyone else around them suffer, and you secretly want them to die. I remember when my grandmother died
Yeah.
this year, and I had my 2 month advanced dream, as I do with every death in the family. And usually I don't know who it is exactly, but I knew the last few death dreams, I knew who it was. And this one, it was particularly my grandmother. And I was in so much denial about it
Uh,
because I would have, because here's the thing, I either have 2 month prediction dreams or I have same day dreams.
okay.
So I rarely have, I sometimes I have 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever, but a lot of times, typically it's same day or 2 months.
Hmm.
So like I had the 2 month dream and then that day she went into the ICU and she was fine. And then she came out of it and I thought, oh, maybe I just dreamt that it was just the ICU. And then I had another dream and then I had another dream and then I had another dream. And I was in such denial about it because she was my second mother.
Right.
So I was just like, no way, no way. This is not, no. I just kept justifying it. And then other people in the family started dreaming it. And I'm just like, I don't know about this. I just didn't want to accept it because
Right.
just because you get intuitive messages doesn't mean you're going to accept it. So I couldn't emotionally prepare for it. But there was a time when I sat my twins down. It was the first dream before I knew she went to the ICU, when I knew something was up. I sat them down. I said, hey, daddy had a dream that grandma is dying. And daddy's dreams come true. So let's prepare for it. And then they watched me cry for a good like 20 minutes before I even told anybody.
Yeah.
And so that was, I guess, a pre-grief cry prep.
Right.
And then the day of when she died, she was in another country. I wasn't really in denial. And I closed my eyes for 1 second, sitting down, and I saw this bird just fall from the sky and just kind of flap its wings as it was bleeding and dying. And
Mhm.
I opened my eyes because I was wide awake and I thought, oh my God, something's happening right now. And then so that kind of set my nervous system up for like it prepared me somewhat that some bad news is happening. Something's going on right now because I'd never had a vision like that before.
Yeah.
The first time. And a few hours later, the coffee machine broke and I'm very, I guess, connected to all the electronics in the house
Yeah.
and I got a call that grandma died. And but that stuff did, I guess then it was in hindsight, you were like, okay, it was meant to go. And the hardest thing was the fact that I couldn't go to Iran where she was to see her. But in the dream, the first dream, I got her death news over the phone.
Wow.
So that was really soothing because I thought, you know what? It was meant for me to receive it over the phone from afar.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, yes, it does prep you in many ways. So it is a blessing and a curse, but it feels like a blessing in hindsight. And then, of course, part of being connected to your inner world is that you're connected to the dead when they die. You can talk to them after and really have good conversations and get to know them and see what it's like. And there's so much that you can have access to. And I don't think it's just me and my family. I think every single person has it. They just haven't honed that craft.
Right. So it's interesting that you say you had this moment of denial, right? Because I was wondering about that where you were describing your NDE and it was that space outside of the fear, the doubt, the worry, where you totally were just in like, I guess, complete non-attachment, that all of a sudden you had this access to what it is we all potentially could have access to, right? So when you did wake up that next day after having that experience and just how things have been unfolding, was it ever hard for you to accept or to believe, or was it just so incredible that right away you were like, oh my God, this is real?
Yeah, that's kind of one of those things where I feel like I have a huge advantage over everyone else
Yeah.
because I don't have any doubt
Yeah.
anymore about the existence of the outer world. I mean, there are times where I do have doubt
Yeah.
when it comes to certain experiences, but when it comes to the non-physical world, I don't have faith anymore because faith is believing in something that there's no proof of.
Right.
And for me, it's a knowing. So it's not faith. Like people are like, have faith. I'm like, well, I don't need to have faith because I already know that everything's going to work out. I know that everything's on energetic level. So it's really, um, yeah, it just changed the way that I see life. But at the same time, for example, when I was having a lot of communication with my dead son and
Mm.
his mother, and there was a day I think it was January or February after, and they died in April. And I thought, God, I'm imagining all this. I'm just dreaming. I'm imagining it. Uh, they would enter my body and it would feel like in a good way, and it would feel like goosebumps,
Yeah.
and they would last like 20 minutes, and they would, buzz for a yes and less of a buzz for a no. And I was communicating with them for a while, and I thought, this is all fake, because a part of me is like, you are just a grieving, pathetic, sad dad.
Hmm.
That's how I felt. Because, when you're down, you don't really have those really amazing thoughts.
Right.
And one night I said, I just give up. I don't think I'm really talking to them. I think I'm making it up. And that night I had had a couple of drinks and I woke up at 2 in the morning because I had to go to the bathroom really bad, as one does when you have a couple of drinks. And I opened my eyes and I saw a figure at the edge of my bed. And I thought it was my best friend's wife because they were a lesbian couple that
Mhm.
had the kids through. I thought it was her wife because I was sleeping in my son's room at the time. And I thought, is that you? And then all of a sudden I realized that it was the dead one.
Wow.
And she was standing by the foot of my bed. And as soon as I said, "Oh my God, it's you," she just it was like this energy just came, very clear silhouette of a human, came and jumped into my body. And it was like 1,000 times more electricity than my body is used to holding. So
Right.
it's like I was in a beautiful way because it felt so positive being electrocuted. And I thought my hands, I lost my vision for like a split second. So everything went black. And then as it came back, I thought that my hands were just jumping up and down because there was so much energy in my body. And I
Yeah.
looked at my hands and everything was still. And it was just love times 1,000 inside of my body. And, it went on for about 10 minutes and it probably would have gone longer. And I just could feel her presence and she was so alive in me.
Mhm.
And then I said, Trisha, I have to go pee because I really had to go pee.
Yeah.
And I knew once I got up, the connection would be gone. And I got up, and as I was gonna go pee, her wife walked out of the living room. And I said, yeah, I told her, I'm like, your dead wife just literally hung out with me in a way that I could never doubt.
Right.
So sometimes there are those things when you're connected and you have doubts, the universe will show you in whatever way you are trained to receive.
Right.
And when I wrote the book, I wanted to train people different techniques so that there would be different techniques that they would have access to. So when one's not working, another one could show up and they would recognize it.
Because of like the individuality of what may work for one person may not work for another. So I do want to get into the book because I'm so curious about this. And one of the things I want to ask you leading up into that is, you've shared with the predictive side, the prophetic side with the dreams and such, but how else can we use our intuition just with our regular life, so to speak? What are the benefits of this access that you found?
Well, I also shared the in the moment decision making
Yeah,
that I think is so helpful.
right.
That should I do this or should I continue this path that I'm on or not?
Yeah.
And then there's another one that's huge when it comes to everyday decision, not decision making, intuition is when you have a question, when you have a question and you're stuck, you pose the question. And I usually just say, whoever is best suited to answer this. I don't say my spirit guide or God or whatever it is. I'm like, whatever energy is best suited to give me the best guidance for this, can you give me the answer to this question?
Mhm.
And then I teach different techniques on how to receiving the answers. There's automatic writing, there's sleeping on it and then waking up the next morning. There's, doing accidental or on purpose downloads where you ask the question and then you taking a shower or on the toilet and all of a sudden the download comes and you have to recognize it when it comes because it is fleeting and it comes in like a big epiphany that and it shows you an angle that you never saw before. And that's when you know it's not from you.
Yeah.
Because right now you're stuck in your perspective. And whenever you tap into something greater, it gives you new perspectives. So it's really important to like acknowledge that feeling, that knowing, because and write it down right away or record it or tell someone about it right away because it's not your usual frequency.
Hmm.
As soon as you revert back to a regular frequency, it almost feels like it doesn't make sense or it just sounds too good to be true or it's not logical or something. Because once you're back to your original perspective, unless you've integrated that new perspective into your life, it just feels like it's a bunch of BS. Like when I wrote this book, I wasn't really planning on writing this book. I was writing something else completely different about the heart, seeing life through the heart perspective, which is, I guess, not that different, but still, it was different. It wasn't about this. And I said a prayer and I said, hey, use me to the best of my abilities and give me the best information I can share with the world that needs it now.
Yeah.
And I woke up with pretty much 15 chapters completed. I thought that was a full book. And as I kept writing it out, I realized it was 29 chapters. And it could have been another 10 chapters, but my publishers would kill me. Uh, but it was definitely a download that came overnight and it changed the trajectory of my life completely because it was aligned with my soul's purpose and it found its own publisher. It did all the work. It all on my first book, I had to do so much work to make it happen. This one was kind of like it had a life of its own, and I treated it like its own entity. And I was like, you do the work. I'm not really doing any of this stuff. I
Yeah.
will sit there, I will be on the typewriter, and I will just spew out whatever comes to my mind. And then you do all the hard stuff because I know getting an agent, getting a publisher, getting all that stuff is not easy work. And I didn't want to do it. I just didn't want to do it. I was like, if you're meant to be out, come out and do your
Yeah.
work. And it did because it aligned with my soul's purpose. Um, and I guess another answer is that the greatest thing about tapping into your inner knowing is knowing when you're on your soul's path
Mm. Yes.
because there's so many different ways your soul speaks to you in your everyday life, showing you that you're on whether it's path or you're on, kind of going astray a little bit or losing your way. And it doesn't just show it through inner knowing. Sometimes you're so lost that it has to show it to you in your outer body, which is the planet, or this the world. Your outer body is, we're part of this universe. We are not different than the universe. We're just a cell in this galaxy. And it will show you through patterns or signs or different things. But if you're not aware of what those things mean, you'll just feel like you're being unlucky or things aren't working out. But if you're
Right.
aware that, wait, these patterns are just trying to talk to me in a way that I'm not listening to my inner voice. So then these patterns have to show up to show me what I need to hear to be aligned with my soul's purpose.
Yeah.
So it does really help in that sense too.
Well, it's interesting. So many things. You say so many things that I'm like, wait, wait, wait. I got questions. Okay. So, one of the things is with what you're sharing too, like how you said, if it's from more of our logical mind, whatever, it'll make sense to us, where when it's intuitive it may be totally different than our perspective. And it just came to mind, it makes sense of why so many people initially will doubt their intuition, because it may differ so much from what they would have come up with on their own. But then if we can really train ourselves, that gift of learning to trust yourself instead of always doubting everything, the just the potential there of like finally trusting yourself sounds incredible. But I have a question for you. Well, two. One, do you think that the intuitive development, I imagine it must change our mind in so many ways, like literally change the way that we process, how we think, how we see, all of that, what your thoughts are around that. But also, some of what came through for you, even what you shared in the book, it sounds like a lot was kind of like channeled in a way. I was wondering, did you learn a lot from your guides, or just from, the intuitive, whatever you were tapping into? Or was a lot of this from just what you personally experienced?
It was kind of like 50-50, I would say,
Yeah.
because I've lived such a long life and I've been in the spiritual world for so long
Yeah.
that some things came easier. Some things was obviously a construct of my previous knowledge,
Mm.
but then there was a lot of information that would come and I thought, what the heck is this? Like, what is this exercise? Like, why am I even putting this exercise on? I've never done this exercise and I'm teaching it.
Yeah.
So then I had to write it out and then I had to do the exercise to make sure that it actually worked because
Right.
I had to trust. And it's funny because there's a huge emphasis on the subconscious mind in this book because I believe that the subconscious mind is a gatekeeper for all things inner world.
Hmm.
And it's also its own supercomputer that just if you just access that alone, it's amazing because it gives you information that you're not aware of because it has every little bit of data that you've been holding on to since the day you were born in you. And you're only aware of like 0.00004% of what's really going on in reality. So there was a lot that I'm sure just came from that. There was a lot that I know I channeled because I don't know how the heck I would have even written that.
Yeah.
Because when I look back at it, I was, some because I would write a chapter and I would sit down to write another chapter and I would read the past chapter, the last one, and be intimidated by it and be thinking, oh my God, I didn't write this. Or I don't know how to write like this. This is not my I don't know where this came from. So I would be very intimidated by it. So a lot of the stuff did come like that. So, and it was just kind of like a 50-50. And that's basically what you want in life. When you tap into your intuition, you want a balance of both. You
Mhm.
never want to just live in intuition and not live with a logical mind.
Right.
You've got to find balance. That's the key thing that I always encourage. Learn both worlds. I studied metaphysics since I was 17, but when I was 31, I enrolled in school and I ended up in UCLA and got my psychology degree because all of it was for me to learn the mind
Right.
and learn how to be happier people and teach people how to be happy. So I thought you got to learn the science behind it and you got to know more about the spiritual stuff, even if it sounds really weird. Learn it. Learn and see what it is, and then use your intuition to see what's accurate for you and what you resonate with. And now when I'm teaching, I pull from every direction because I believe in balance. So I think the more intuitive you get, the more, I mean, if you got to make sure that you're also grounding yourself. It's like people that exercise too much and they don't read books. Got to
Right.
kind of do both. Meditate, read, mind, body, soul. You got to feed all three at all times. And then when you're acting in life, and I use the word acting because we're kind of like playing out this play, use all three tools, your mind, body, and your soul.
Mhm.
And that's how you get the best versions. It's my holy trinity.
Yeah. No, I love that you say that because I think in this realm we can be so mesmerized a lot by even the idea of intuition and these kinds of things. And then people will totally lose themselves and become so ungrounded. And yeah, so I'm glad that you put that emphasis on also so people don't think that there's something wrong with being logical and still having that lens of perspective, but rather how do we marry the two, which I guess ultimately everything in this realm is like, how do we unify everything? But I love that you say getting to know all of these aspects of how we process in consciousness. So I'm glad you also brought up the subconscious mind because we hear this a lot in terms of not just intuition, but even manifestation. So, from what you've studied and experienced, can you kind of just like sum up for us why this area of our consciousness is so important for healing in a lot of ways, manifesting things? What is this? Like why does it,
So
why
the
does it matter?
subconscious mind is basically, think about your mind as a big ship,
Uh-huh.
and there's crew on that ship, right? There's the ship and the crew, and then there's the little captain, and the captain is driving the ship. So your
Yeah.
conscious mind is the captain, and the subconscious mind is the ship and the crew. So the captain can only do so much. It can steer the ship, but the majority of the work is getting done through your subconscious mind because it needs to be efficient. So here's the thing. The subconscious mind can process 11 million bits of data per second. So 11 million bits. I might be off by a little bit, but it's in the, tens of
It's
millions of
ridiculous.
data.
Yes.
Yeah, but your conscious mind can only process about 100 and something,
No.
just at 100 and something, not 100 million, 100,000,
Right.
150 or 60 or something, 167. I think that's the number that someone made up. um, so just think about all the information, all the data that's going inside of you at all times that you're not processing, you're not aware of, because the subconscious mind has to delete and distort and generalize. And it literally says, you know what? There's all this information coming in right now, but because of this person, or I'm going to use myself as an example, because of Happy's beliefs and what he believes the world to be, we have to filter out anything that doesn't resonate with his beliefs. So we're only going to bring to his awareness only the few little hundred and something things that match his beliefs. So
Mhm.
so his experience stays consistent, so his equilibrium doesn't get thrown off and he doesn't feel unstable in this world because it's so easy to feel unstable. So it first it does that. So it deletes a lot of stuff. And based on your beliefs, and the beliefs are the programs that it runs because it has to be efficient. Like my arm's moving really fast right now, but I'm not thinking about all the muscles that I have to move to do this.
Right.
The subconscious has to do all the work, and it can move, it's functioning with trillions of cells are being orchestrated by the subconscious all at once. And they all have their own little minds. But still, it's the subconscious is the part that does it. But it has programming that it puts in place, especially when you're younger, before you're 7 or 8, that it has all this programming that it has created so that you can function faster in this world. It's like an operating system in your phone or computer that it's created so that you can use the computer. So when you're trying to manifest something, if it goes against your programming, it's not going to happen because it's not really going to mesh with your ideas. And the teachers say, the greatest teachers, change your beliefs and you can have a different reality. But guess what? Those beliefs have been embedded in your mind for
Right.
so long. And once you change your beliefs, you don't know how to function. So it's really important to first be aware of your beliefs and then change, attempt to change them and use every technique to override them. And then once you do that, so that's the answer for manifestation. If
Yeah.
it goes against your programming, it's not going to happen. And there's
Mhm.
something called the RAS, which is it's law of attraction in your brain, basically. And it's what whittles everything down to the 167. So if it knows that you like the color red or you like this or that, it'll just make sure that it'll show you that. So it's really hard to manifest outside of what you believe because your brain is deleting all the information that could lead you to that future. Now, when it comes to healing, that's a whole nother story. So your emotions, so the subconscious stores everything in the body, majority, because the brain, it can store stuff in the brain, but the body is a great storage system. So stores a lot of stuff in there. But whenever you have anything that you don't resolve or an emotion that doesn't get processed efficiently, it has to be stored in the body or somewhere. So it says, hey, there's too much on Yolanda's plate right now. She needs to do this show right now. So let's push everything down and store it down there somewhere. And so she can host this episode right now. Okay. So it pushes it down. And then later you have something else to do, something else to do. And it doesn't really present it back up again because you have stuff to do. And then
Right.
another big emotion comes and it shoves it down. Another event comes, it shoves it down. And now your body is like a storage space for unresolved issues.
Yeah.
And then the funny part is that every time your mind quiets down, it's like, oh, wait, Yolanda's got time to deal with this. Let me bring up these old issues. And Yolanda's like, hey, I'm trying to sleep. It's 4 a.m. I don't want it. Thank you. Shove it down. I'm taking a sleeping pill. I'm going back to sleep.
Right. Right.
So it stays. So when you understand that your subconscious is actually, allowing to function by shoving stuff down,
Mhm.
then the more you learn how to process trapped emotions and events in your body, the more you can heal. Because when you don't process that stuff, it has to get your attention somehow and it turns
Yeah.
into disease. So because it turns into disease, eventually you have to learn to acknowledge it, pay attention to it, and let it process itself. And when you pay attention to it, it eventually goes away. That's just the natural state of things.
Wow. I feel like we are learning today with Happy. Okay. You're giving us so many good nuggets of information. So, a couple of things come up, of course, with what you said. Again, one with what you just said, like with the idea of like, now, okay, my mind is clear. I can rest. And now here comes information, but we tend to try to shove it away. That brings me right back to that experience you had with the NDE where you were in that state of just like, whatever, I'm letting it all go. But that was the access point. So it also brings to mind how at the foundation of a lot of this work, whether energy work, intuitive development, all these things, there are a lot of practices that teach us how to meditate or direct the mind to kind of get out of the noise, so to speak. So it seems like everything keeps pointing to this access point of quiet, kind of just how do you allow yourself to focus beyond all of the conscious mind, that noise. And in that, it comes up of this idea of, being aware of our intuition and whatever downloads may come through. There is kind of this weird dance in this altered state of mind. And I guess it would be like to what you were saying earlier, where we have to dance between the logic and the intuition, that still in general is an altered state for us because it's not what we're used to being in. But then that leads to something else you said about how we have to kind of acclimate to what it is we may change in the subconscious mind, right? So there's this, God, there's a lot going on.
I love
So
that.
yeah, but so I have two questions. One is the subconscious work for allowing ourselves to access intuition. Does that tend to come up where people may have a belief or blocks, but if they do some subconscious work, that may allow them to even dance in that realm? But then because of that, what's in the book?
So what I talk about in the book is that, first of all, the subconscious, if you don't think you're intuitive and you're not really getting intuitive messages, it's because you don't believe you're intuitive.
Yeah.
And because you don't believe you're intuitive, you could be getting huge intuition, um, intuitive insights, and your subconscious just deletes it. I mean, it stores it, but deletes it
Mhm.
from your conscious awareness. So a lot of people that say I'm not intuitive or I don't dream, I say you dream, you are intuitive. You just your subconscious doesn't think that's part of your identity, so it has to delete it. So I give exercises on how to start believing and noticing times when you were intuitive so that your subconscious has to think that it's important enough for you and it is part of who you want to be. Enough. It has to
Yeah.
know that enough that it will include intuitive information in that 167 bits of data per second. Otherwise, it just will not do it. And
Mhm.
and I laid it out as well as I could in the book to be able to put a crack in the foundation of your identity if you don't believe you're intuitive. And if you do believe, like for me, I didn't believe I was a clairvoyant. I could see visions. And I just gave you examples of two visions, the bird and the dead best friend.
Right.
And those were out of necessity because I was ignoring all my other usual senses. So the subconscious, like, well, you already believe you're intuitive. So we're going to just shove this thing down down your throat in a way that you can't deny it. But a lot of times you really do have to acknowledge that maybe the reason you haven't been intuitive, you haven't had access to it, is because it's being deleted by your mind all the time. And it's really there. You're
Mhm.
just not noticing it. And that's really the premise of the entire book is really learning the language of the subconscious. Because even if you have you talk to God, which I don't think anyone really talks to God, you talk to, versions of things that feel like God.
Yeah.
I think you'd pop a fuse if you blow a fuse if you talk to actual God. It's your subconscious still has to translate it for you in one of your inner senses. I mean, there's the pineal gland, which is the little gland in the back of your head that people use, but I don't even use that because that the pineal gland, what it does is translates stuff into your inner senses, your
Mhm.
inner vision, inner voice, inner feeling, your whatever it is. It has to translate into that. And so you have to figure out which one of your senses are dominant. How does your subconscious communicate with you? What symbology does it use? And once you master that at the communication with your subconscious, then you can just tap into it and say, hey, there's this girl that I just had a podcast interview with. Her name was Yolanda. She was sitting there. Was there anything I didn't notice about her? Were her intention? This is me asking me after
Right.
the show. Was there anything about her that I should have been more aware of? Were her intentions pure? Should I even reach out to her and try to be her friend?
Mhm.
Certain stuff. And my inner guidance will be like, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no.
Yeah.
So there's so much lovely, amazing, beneficial things that can happen just from tapping into your subconscious and not even tapping into the different layers of reality that we have access to. And then once you learn the language of the subconscious mind, then you can tap into your soul's purpose or your soul and say, hey, does this, give me something huge.
Right.
And then you have access to everything. It's almost like learning how to type. And then once you learn how to type, then you can write a story. But if you don't
Yes.
know how to write or type, then writing a story is almost impossible. So in the book, I teach you how to type or write, and then I also teach you how to tune into different frequencies and learn to bring in different stuff.
Yeah, I know. I love all of the layers to this. And I can say, because, I did years ago, like, I can't even tell you how many psychic development, intuitive development, all the classes, and, from all the lenses. But I feel like from what you're saying, it's like this book is cracking the codes for us because there is that piece that I think a lot of people don't necessarily address. And that is that part of what about the people that have this deep seated belief that this is an impossibility for me or this isn't something that I can do. So I love that you mentioned you have exercises in there for us to kind of strengthen our intuitive muscle. You're also going to tackle the beliefs beneath the surface to help us overcome all of that. I can't wait to read this. I'm so curious to see what all of this information you have is. I also love that you bring up the dance between logic and intuition so people don't think they have to throw that out. And there's just so many good things. It's kind of unbelievable, but adding to the goodness, right? You also have some online courses coming up, which I'm a big believer in, I can read anything is fine and I can apply it, but you go so much deeper when you get to have that experience.
Well, I love online courses, especially group ones,
Yeah.
because group coaching is amazing, or group courses are amazing because
Yeah.
you get to go through it with a bunch of other people,
Yep.
and you get to see some people really ahead of you, some people behind, and you really get to like see everything. You don't judge yourself so much.
Yes.
And also, if you're paying money for a course and you're setting aside like 3 hours a week for 12 weeks, for example,
Mm-hmm.
for a course, you're signaling to your subconscious that this is something that is important to you,
Yeah.
or if you're taking the time to read a book and really getting into it, you're signaling to the subconscious that it's important to you.
Right.
And when you do that, then once it knows that it's important to you, it will start including more intuitive insight into your awareness. And it's really important to have the desire first. First, you have to wake up the desire, which is if I am more intuitive, I will have help. I'll have help from an extra friend that knows what's best for me, that can see my future, has seen my past, and can guide me better. And I have an extra friend to give me advice in life. Doesn't mean I have to take it, but I have an extra friend now.
Yeah.
And that desire is enough to wake something up if you believe it.
Right.
And then you have to give it time, because then if you don't give it time, and start with the stuff you're really good at and work on that. Don't, like, for me, it was like I wanted to be a channel, and I wanted to be a verbal channel. I wanted to close my eyes and start speaking. And there was so much resistance to the idea of me being a channel. And it wasn't at first, other than the funny voice or being weird in the family or whatever, I just didn't think I was special enough to be a channel.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, who am I to be someone who's connected to something greater? I'm not that special. I'm just that guy who wishes he was special. And that was my biggest hindrance in my entire life in channeling. And I realize now, as an artist, I'm a channel. As a writer, I'm a channel. As someone who loves to do all things creative, I channel creativity. And sometimes I verbally channeled. And then as soon as I verbally channel, my subconscious mind or my conscious mind kicks in and says, "You sound too weird. You might be making it up." And even when I got proof
Yeah.
that it was real, I still wanted to dismiss it because I am what is known as a skeptical or skeptic mystic.
Yes.
I like to everything to have proof, but the intuition and the intuitive mind does not work unless if you were looking for proof. And then if you stop looking for proof, intuition comes, then it becomes its own proof.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Woo, that was a lot. But the good thing about what you just said, I love, is it also brings up that point that I'm glad we're not missing out on, is that this may look different for all of us. And, we have our ideas of what it's supposed to look like. But if we have that openness of mind of knowing we really don't know what it's going to look like until we start applying. And as you say, like be consistent, show that it matters to you. Who knows what it's going to look like?
Just from social media and me posting about intuition, people, when I talked about manifestation, people were so hungry for it.
Hmm.
But when I talk about intuition, which I think is the most important element of life,
Yeah.
so many people are so dismissive about it,
Yeah.
and I notice like the videos on intuition will get like 50% or even less views or likes because people just are like, oh, intuition, whatever. People don't think of it as this credible thing that's in your life.
Yeah.
But to me, it's almost like I'm putting a pot of gold in front of people,
Yeah.
and people are just walking away from it. And then there's people who are going to eat it up, like you, I'm sure,
Yeah.
because you've already been. This might be the one layer that might crack another, like you said, the code. Who knows? But it's just funny because people don't really think that people have a preconceived notion of what intuition is and what inner sight is, or you have to see visions, or you have
Right.
to do this, or you have to be a prophetic dreamer. It's none of that. It's just adding a new layer to your life that you didn't use before, and it will look different for every single person. That's why I literally, in every single chapter of the book, I'm like, don't have expectations. Don't try to do something. Don't try to have the same results as someone else. Acknowledge where you were, jot it down, make sure you journal, and then see where you're going with it because it just keeps changing and moving. And then before you know it, you have these superpowers that you never thought you had before, and
Mhm.
you have learned techniques that to you, here's the thing, once you get the actual abilities, it will feel very normal.
Yeah.
It will feel like nothing. It almost feels like nothing. For most people, like my prophetic dreamings, I never thought it was special. Because it's just who you are. It's becomes part of you, and it happens so gradually that unless you compare yourself to a year ago, it's like a first grader when they get hit second grade, they're like, "Oh, I'm just learning English." But
Yeah.
if you show that level of English to the first grader, when they start, they'll be like, "I'll never be able to get this."
Yeah.
So just go with it and see what happens, and buy the book and see what get through the first few chapters where I kind of talk about me and the questions people normally have, and then the juicy stuff comes up.
Yes. Well, it's kind of funny what you say because I know that we do focus a lot on manifestation, I guess, of course, because you're so hyper focused on your desire. I want what I want. I want what I want. And it's like, of course, intuition would help with that because then you have this inner guidance that helps you to not just necessarily get what you want, but have more understanding even around what may be best for you in this moment or yeah, so it seems like they would go to hand in hand so beautifully. But yeah, we're all going to get this book, right? I know I am.
Yay.
So it's called The Intuition Bible: How and Why to Tap into Your Inner Wisdom by Happy Allie. I can't thank you enough. You gave us a lot today.
Thank you.
So I just want to point out you have some Intuition Bible meditations that are coming, the online courses. Could you, and you have a subconscious manifestation method that you've also come up with. Can you give us just a snippet of that?
Yeah, I realized that manifestation was really easy for some people and really hard for some others.
Yeah.
And I realized it was really the subconscious aspect of it. So I took the teachings of the law of attraction and the laws of the universe and all that stuff and kind of laid it out, and then really put a lot of emphasis on the subconscious mind's role in accepting and allowing things to come into your life. So I felt like it was always a two-piece step that a lot of spiritual teachers didn't talk about, and there were a lot of people that just didn't get results. And I was lucky enough because my mom, when I was really young, she said, we're really lucky. She said she was really lucky, and I just by proxy, I assumed that was me too. We're
Yeah.
really lucky we get whatever we want, and you
Mm,
just have to ask. And we didn't know what manifestation was at the time.
yeah.
So I automatically adopted that concept into my mind. So I'm a master manifester. I want something, it happens. And then
Yeah.
somebody else told me when I was younger, I was trying to move a mountain, like the equivalent of moving a mountain, and something that was seemed very impossible. And I told my aunt, who loves me so much, I said, "Hey, I want to do this." And she said, "If anyone can do it, it's you."
Mm,
And you don't realize how many saying things people say, how much things people say to you that resonates within you or programs you at a young age. But those are the things that were put inside of me as at a young age, as a young person, that allowed me to become the master manifester that I am at with greater ease.
yes.
I remember discovering The Secret, and then um right now the editor of The Secret, is her quote is on the cover of my book.
Oh,
Like there's certain things where, or I met Rhonda Byrne and her daughter like a month later, and then we became good friends. Like there's certain things that it was just like when I think it just happens because I believe that it happens. And I believe that there's no plan B for me. There is no like for me when I have a house that I live in that's really nice in LA for a really good price when I got it. And when I saw it, everyone said, even that realtor was like, "Don't even think you're gonna get this. This is not gonna happen. I'm just gonna tell you, they've been trying to rent it out for the last 4 months. It's never gonna happen, and especially to a single guy. He wants a family, blah blah blah." Guess what? I was like, "This is my house," and because I recognized the house,
Yeah.
and it was my house. I've been here for 8 years. So there's certain things where I just know what I know, and then when you're tapped into your intuition and you come across someone or something that you think you want, and your intuition's like, no, that's not it, then you know not to overexert your energetic powers on
Yeah.
this thing. And that's where intuition kicks in. So it's like a dance of all things. But yeah, my subconscious manifestation course has like an online pre-recorded course people can take. But I stopped teaching that as much because I think that once they learn it, people can do it. It's already on there. But I love working with people discovering their inner powers, superpowers. So
Yeah.
to me, that's really exciting. So that's what I love to do. And that's what I'm going to do for the next, probably until the next book decides to tell me that's what it's going to be about and write itself.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, I want to make sure I'm glad you said that. You also authored a book called The Charisma Within. So we can look for both of your books. And the Intuition Bible, I imagine we can get that on Amazon,
Everywhere,
online, everywhere. Yeah. And
everywhere.
to learn more about your work, but also to access the online courses and the meditations, we go to your website, happyinsights.net, which I'll put the link down in the show description, of course. And then you also have on Instagram, Happy Insights Official.
Yes.
Yes. So we should all follow you there.
Thank you.
Again, Happy, you gave us so much. I feel like I have to go back and listen to this interview myself.
Thank
You gave
you.
us some great things. So for all of us who want to learn, go deeper, and I would say this is what's funny is like I told you, I've studied intuition for years and all of these things, but I also love that we shouldn't ever limit ourselves. So even people who are listening that may feel like, oh, I'm already in relationship with my intuition, always have that beginner's mind that we always talk about in Reiki anyway, of you don't know how something else may expand you even more. So I'm really looking forward to reading. Are you still doing the podcast?
Yeah, yeah. My podcast is now shorter episodes.
Okay.
The first few seasons were longer episodes. It's just fun facts, like 20 minutes. Like I talk about the four chambers of the emotional heart, which things that I receive, download, and then I just speak about it. And there some things in the past were things that you've heard of before, but some
Mhm.
things are just fresh new information that I will wake up with and I'll be like, oh, new download. Got to make that into a podcast and it makes sense. And so yeah, my podcast is Happy Insights. It's available everywhere. Everything I have is available everywhere. So
Everywhere. That's the
yeah,
best way to do it. Yeah. So Happy Insights podcast, happyinsights.net, and Happy Insights Official on
thank
Instagram.
you.
Thank you, my love. I hope to see you again soon. Come back when the next book comes out.
Thank you. Or even before.
Yeah, before. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us, everyone. We'll see you soon. Okay, beautiful alchemist. First of all, we have to thank Happy Ali for coming to share with us all of this beautiful information, including his new book, The Intuition Bible: How and Why to Tap into Your Inner Wisdom. I definitely can't wait to read this book. Don't forget, you can also listen to Happy's podcast called Happy Insights Podcast. And you can learn more about his work through his website at happyinsights.net, and follow Happy on Instagram at Happy Insights Official. Okay. Now, also, If you are a Reiki practitioner or teacher, you do not want to miss the early bird special for the Reiki Raise Global Healing Summit. The link is down below. Right now, you have access to the early bird special, which is 70% off, and that makes it $57 for the entire summit. So access that right away. Start having your fun. And if you want to spend an entire year with me, going deeper into your practice, really committing to awakening your own inner energetic alchemist, go to my website, theenergeticalchemist.com. Sign up for the Alchemy Circle. There's so much that you're going to get access to. You can read all about it and sign up today. All right, my loves, I am just thankful to be back. I'm thankful to be back. Thankful to be having these wonderful conversations. I hope that you are enjoying them as well. And remember to always journey in love.